to my channel. I am talking quietly because there are other people sleeping and I'm trying to not wake them up. Also, it is like, what time is it? It's almost midnight on a Thursday, and I just promised that I would try to upload every Friday. So I'm gonna let you know in advance this video might be late. But I actually read a book. Isn't that wild? Wasn't the greatest book, and I'm gonna talk about it. So here we are. I read a book on my TBR list that's been sitting there for a while. I decided to kind of try to spend some time going through my TBR list of books, and I did a haul at the library. Haul isn't really the right word. I got 2 books at the library and I finished one of them. So the book I am going to be reviewing is called Paper Princess by Erin Watt. Watt. I'm gonna say it's Watt. Paper Princess by Erin Watt. And it is, I originally thought that it was going to be a YA, but after looking it up, apparently it's new adult. So that's very interesting. I also thought it was a standalone, and then I found out, like, right after I finished it, that there's like 5 books in the series. And I don't really know if I'm going to be finishing the series, if I'm being honest. So, let's talk about Paper Princess. I was interested in it because I assumed that it was going to be like a rags to riches kind of story. So basically, before I get into this, I always forget. Let me do my disclaimer. This video, first of all, is going to talk about a lot of triggering content, stuff about sexual abuse and alcoholism and drugs, psychological and emotional abuse. So if you're not cool with any of that, be forewarned. I'm also going to be spoiling most of the story here, so if you care about that, you should probably click off. But you know, here we are. Paper Princess. The story is supposed to be about this girl named Ella Harper, and she's basically dirt poor. Her mother died a while ago of cancer, and now she's been living on her own for about a year-ish, trying to like make it through the system without going into foster care. So she's going to school, but she's also working 2 jobs. One is like as a waitress, and the other one, she's a stripper. So she's like a sex worker. So there's that. Then she runs into this guy named Callum Royal, who claims to be her guardian and basically like adopts her, and he's a super rich guy, and now she has to live with him and his 5 sons. That's the most basic I can give the story away without spoiling it. So that's what the story is supposed to be about. I was under the impression that this was going to be a sort of rags to riches sort of tale, and this girl like finding herself and trying to keep parts of herself despite being around like rich people and not like letting money change you as a person. You know, you get the narrative. All right. The issue is that the 5 sons don't want her there. So, you know, there's that. She also, you know, deals with like not fitting in and stuff. So I thought that's where the story was going to go. What I knew before jumping in was that it was romance. It is heavily influenced on romance, and the main plot is mostly romance. Where do I even start? First of all, let me talk about Ella first. So Ella she starts off as a sex worker, and the concept is that she strips, but there's no full nudity. Like, she's not in the full nudity section, but then like she finds out that Callum Royal is after her, and she thinks that he's a creepo that's trying to like get her into sex trafficking. So she leaves the school. When they called her down to the principal's office, she made up some excuse and like left the school and was like, I gotta skip town. So she called some guy that was like the manager at the place, and then like told him she wanted to go like to the full nudity section. So that's where we're at. It's never really addressed in the same breath, despite Ella having this sort of background, she's still a virgin, and there's still this emphasis on like, you know, holding on to her virginity and holding on to the fact that she's still pure and she does it, and like it's something she gets bullied for, like by other people once she like moves into this new community. Like all the other rich kids and all the other adults just assume she was some whore that's trying to fuck like Callum, who's technically supposed to be her dad, and then even Easton, who's technically supposed to be her brother. Oh, girl, we'll talk about it. But like, people were assuming she was just sleeping with the entire family. People thought she was trashy and called her a slut and a whore and all these things just because she stripped. And I kind of like, I understand that people get that misconception of like, oh, if you're a stripper, that means you're not a virgin, which is not necessarily true. But the book never addressed like the trauma that can come along with being so young and being forced to strip, because she started stripping when she was like 15. So she's 17 now, so she's been doing it for like 3 years. And she started when she was 15 because her mother got sick and with cancer, and she was trying to financially support her. Girl, like, it's a whole mess. I know several like romance books that will try to introduce like this whole idea of like the girl being like risque and sexual, but she's still a virgin by heteronormative standards, which is a whole nother conversation. But you know, she's still a virgin, and I was like, I feel like we need to start having books where it's like, it's, you know, try to prove that it's okay for girls to not be a virgin when they meet their like one true love. Like it like just saying that, yeah, like yeah, if you want to save your virginity, that's cool, but it's also okay to not save your virginity. Like, all right, okay, whatever. Anyway, there's no trauma, especially because halfway through the book, like partying is a big aspect in the book, right? And so Ella ends up going to a lot of parties with a lot of underage drinking, a lot of underage drugs, like a lot of it underage drugs, with a lot of underage drinking, a lot of drugs, a lot of usual crap that happens with teenagers, right? So she's at this party. That's fine and dandy, whatever. It's like teenagers do that crap. I can't relate, but like it's the thing that happens. But she gets drugged at a party by this like guy that she was like starting to date, but she was really only dating him in order to impress not to impress. She was only dating him because she was trying to make like this other guy jealous who she really wanted to be with, but what the fuck ever. So he drugs her with like Molly, and then on top of that he gives her cocaine. And like, it's like the brothers, the other royal boys, the 5 other royal boys come in and save her. But like, they never, like, it's never addressed. And then, hold on, let me tell you about this. After she leaves the party, she's like, the book is like, because she's on drugs, she's all like turned on and whatnot. And it's like, when they get home, it's kind of emphasized that like, well, someone needs to satisfy her sexual needs, and the only one who can do it is Reed, because someone has to do it. And like, Reed is kind of like, I'll do it, who by the way is her brother. Reed is kind of like, I'll do it. So he takes her to her room, and then like he talks to her and he's like, we shouldn't, because I would feel like I'm taking advantage of you. And she's like, but I want to. And he's like, no. And she's like, but I want to. And he's like, oh, okay. And he does it. And I'm like, y'all. So like, that's a thing. But then on top of that, like everything after the book is never addressed. Like there's a whole thing where like they plot to get revenge on the guy that like did it to her by basically like humiliating him in front of like his peers. They basically like do this thing where they go to another party and then like they get him naked. But the way they do it is that they pretend like Ella pretends like she's going to like have sex with him again, and she gets him naked, and then they like knock him out, because she went with like 2 of her other friends, and they like knock him out, they strip him and then like he stripped himself, but like they tie him up and then they kind of like suspend him above this like pool area, and it's like surrounded by glass. So then like they like do something where they like reveal him through the glass and stuff like that, and everybody sees him and laughs, and he's like, oh, there, he's so small. But I'm like, that's so, y'all. Let me tell you something. Someone who's drugged and almost sexually assaulted would not go back to their abuse to get revenge. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it seems very unrealistic. And then on top of that, it's never addressed again. Like, she never feels trauma for the things that happen to her. And neither does any of the other characters. We have other characters like Callum, who is like technically her legal guardian. He has an alcohol problem. He's an alcoholic. And then he also is mourning the death of like his wife. But then he also has Brooke, who is like his girlfriend mistress. And it's like he really doesn't have any romantic feelings for her. And it's a very apparently obvious that like he's just using her for sex. But she keeps trying to like make their relationship like work. But the thing is that his issues with his alcoholism is never addressed in this book. Maybe it's addressed in another book. But like, who cares, right? So then there's Gideon. Really, there's nothing wrong with Gideon. Gideon is like already in college, so he's like away for majority of the book. He only really shows up like randomly in the beginning for Ella to meet him, and then he shows up for the like getting revenge scene, and then he shows up again all the way at the end, only to warn her. By the way, he drove 5 hours at the end to like warn her, like, don't be with Reed. Reed is like, all royals are bad. And we just break women's hearts. And then he's like, he tells her this, and then he leaves to go back to school. But Ella was like, I feel like he's not going back to school. All right, girl. So that's Gideon. Then you have Reed, who is like pretty much the next. I'm gonna go oldest to youngest. But then you have Reed, who is like the main love interest, and he doesn't really have much going on with him. He basically just is rude to Ella all the time. He's supposed to be like the commanding top dog, and anything that he says is law at the school and with his brothers. There's no particular reason as to why people listen to him. They just do. And he's like tough guy. And like he uses like fighting. So like what is it? Like boxing. Like he goes to boxes late at night in secret to like work off steam, and that's whether it's like sexual frustration or whatever it is, or like he has like anger issues, so he'll go off and blow steam. Like that's how he deals with his problems pretty much. Like even with like mourning his mom, he goes and like fights, and that's what he does. So that's Reed, and he's like the love interest, which we're gonna talk about later, but he's like the love interest. Then you have Easton. Easton was my favorite character, but also the most problematic. Easton is like how do I explain this? So like it's weird because like several of the like royals will call themselves like whores, just because they have sex a lot, which I found kind of interesting. So like they said, apparently according to them, it's like Callum. I don't know about Gideon. Gideon ? Reed, Easton, and then one of the twins, I don't know which one, but one of the twins is like whores or like sluts. So Easton likes sex, he likes being drunk all the time, he's an alcoholic, and he does like heavy drugs. He's always wasted. He has a gambling problem. Like he just has a lot wrong with his life. His second biggest issue seems to be that like he's very non-committal. Like he will not get into a relationship with anyone. Never addressed. It's kind of like all the other characters are kind of just like, that's how Easton is, and that's it. So, you know, that's Easton. We're gonna talk about these characters in a second, but then you have Sebastian and Sawyer, which are the twins, which one of them apparently has a steady girlfriend and then the other one is like a slut. But it's weird, and I don't know if this was ever clear in the book, but basically one of the twins pretends to be his brother in order to be able to like sleep with his girlfriend. And I don't think his brother knows. Because Ella was like, she said something about like telling his brother, and he was like, shut up, don't say anything. And like, she was like, please, I'm not going to say anything. But like, never dressed. I don't think his girlfriend knows either. So like, the fact that he's pretending to be his twin brother in order to be able to sleep with this girl is... All right. So those are the royals. I have strong feelings about it just because I was like, you have all these characters that have these problems, and it's fine, but I kind of expected these things to be addressed and they just never were. And I was like thinking like, maybe I just need to read the other books. Like maybe I just need to get into those books because maybe they'll get addressed eventually. But it really doesn't feel like that because the whole book, honestly, like a lot of people were saying like there's no real plot. And I tried to wait like a day at least to get my thoughts together to figure out if I felt like there was really a plot or not. And I came to the conclusion that I don't think there is, because you have the premise, which is like dirt poor girl gets like adopted by like really rich guys and now she lives with them. Like it's a decent premise, but other than that there's nothing else. Like, there's no issue. Like, the emphasis of the book isn't necessarily on fitting in or growing up or finding yourself. It's kind of there, but the emphasis is on, like, the romance and Ella and Reed. And every time you turn around, Ella and Reed, Ella and Reed, Ella and Reed. Ella and Reed don't like each other. Ella and Reed made a truce now. Ella and Reed are, like, she admits that she likes Reed, but Reed won't like her back, and now Reed likes her, and now they're a couple and ooey. And it's like, all right, but like, what about all the other stuff that's important to like what's going on in Ella's life? I kind of talked about trauma, but I also wanted to mention that like, it's very apparently obvious that like, and I suspect the author, we're going to talk about the author in a second, that the author hasn't experienced true poverty, because she, like, from what Ella was saying was that they had this life where they were hopping from like place to place to place, whether it was Ella's mother dealing with like bad boyfriends, and then they had to skip town because she was running away from a bad boyfriend, or she lost her job because of a creep boss and then had to find a new job, or even like her getting sick, like stuff like that. They always hopped around from place to place, and I was like, well, that's very interesting. And you would think it would kind of play into Ella's sense of like unstable household, like not necessarily getting used to being in one place for too long, and like trying not to get close to people because she's trying to save herself from the disappointment of losing them again, because she'll eventually be like, well, this all could be gone in a second, whether it's her fault or not. But like, it was kind of a thing for like half a second, but then she never talks about it again. She talks about it on one page where like she finds out, like they read the will, and that's all the way in like the last 100 pages somewhere. They read the will, and she's like crying because she's like, oh, I wished we had a stable house, or I wished I had siblings when I was lonely, and I wish this and I wish that, and now I have all of it, but it's still like I'm still not happy, or something like that. And I was like, okay, I guess, but like, I'm going to talk about the second most important thing, which I feel like not enough people have been acknowledging in their reviews, but like, this book is incest, and no one's addressing it. Like, it's the concept, and even Ella admits it like halfway through the book. But if you think about it this way, Reed is her legal guardian. And I was confused with the whole will bit, because they were like, well, we have to read the will to like find out. The will is really just like finding out how much of like her dad shit that she gets. I thought it was going to be more so like talking about custody and stuff, but like it isn't. So from the moment Reed steps foot into the school, he comes in with like papers that basically talk about like how he has custody of Ella now and how he's her legal guardian. So legally, Callum is like her legal guardian, which makes his 5 sons her brothers. Can I call it stepbrothers? Is stepbrothers? Adopted brothers, technically. But like they're basically her brothers. And it's weird because where do I even start? Let's start with Easton, first of all. Easton. And I'm not sure because the book is not that good at explaining what the fuck the relationships were in the beginning. But like Easton, in my opinion, was introduced as this character that was kind of just he was a complete ass, if I'm being honest. Like he would make very crude jokes to Ella and like touch himself in front of her and like do all that. Like Easton was a prick. And so, but then there comes a time where like they kind of have a heart to heart. Like they have heart to hearts a lot in the book. But first starting out, we hit this moment where like Easton kind of starts to like her. And the first scene where he opens up to her is like he's drunk and no one else is in the house. So he goes to like her room and they start talking, and then like he's getting real snugged up to her and whatnot, and then they kind of like end up making out, and Reed sees and he gets all pissed and storms off or whatever, right? And he's like, no, I wasn't, and he like leaves. But I'm like, what the fuck was that? Because they're siblings. They're siblings. They are siblings. Then they go to this party and like they kind of drunkenly make out, and he talks to her and he's like, it's okay if you're imagining me as someone else because I'm imagining you as someone else too. But they're making out. That's her brother. And like even afterwards, like there are other characters in the book that are sitting here like, oh, you're fucking all the royals. Are you just jumping from royal to royal? Are you starting with the twins and working your way up? And like, you know, she gets like her Ella and like the other brothers get so offended by this. But I'm like, it's kind of weird because like other characters acknowledge that, hey, she's like we think she's fucking her brothers, but no one's at the same time, no one's saying anything. And everyone's just like, yeah, they're hot, so like you must be and I'm like, they are siblings. So okay. All right. So then it turns from Easton kisses Ella. And then for whatever reason, there's a rule now where like in the school where it's like if Easton kisses you, then like you're free game for people to like date you. Because apparently before Reed was like, stay away from her and you know, not talk to her or what the fuck ever. So like no one tried to be cool with her. But since Easton kissed her, they were like, yeah, if you get kissed by Easton, it's like a rite of passage. So now other guys started approaching her to like date her or whatever. And I was like, that makes zero sense because her brother kissed her. Now other guys can start dating her. And then after that, like after that's established, from there on, Easton is like established as like the brother character. Like he'll go to her room and they'll hang out and he'll like kiss her cheek or he'll like touch her hand, but the book is always like, but it wasn't a romantic way. It was in like a comforting way, and like trying to emphasize that like, hey, Easton is just a brother. But I'm like, you set up this chemistry between these two characters and then you just dropped it. So now they have a healthy like sibling relationship, but before they didn't. But then he also still jokes around. Like halfway through the book, he kind of stops. But there was a part where he was like, the book was establishing like their brother and sister, ha ha ha, and like, But like Easton would still make sexual jokes or like say how he would like sleep with her or how they should sleep with each other, and I'm like, what is going on? What are you doing? Explain it make it make sense. Let's talk about the psychological and emotional abuse. First of all, but from the beginning, it's basically this mind game of the brothers, all five of them, messing with Ella. Like, they'll be rude to her, or they'll like ignore her, or like they'll do these things in order to for her to like basically like leave, to like be like trying to emphasize like, we don't want you here. But Ella is like, doesn't want to be there. But then it's also like the reason why she stays is because Callum, tells her that like he'll pay her 10 grand a month for every month that she stays to like live with him. And then on top of that, once she graduates, he'll give her like $500,000 to like go to school or something like that, or like basically say he was going to pay for her entire college on top of that after she graduates, because she said how she wanted to go to college and like, you know, do some, she was like something, I want to do something in law or like business and not dance, even though she used to dance. She danced for 3 years, but then she was like, dance isn't practical and I need to do something, whatever. Okay, I get it, girl. Like, you're poor and you don't want to be poor anymore. They do that. Like, there was a scene where like Callum forces Ella to go to like for his son to take Ella to a party in order for her to like kind of socialize and like meet the other kids before school starts, and they take her. But when they bring her back, they're like, oh, this is where you get off, sister, because we're gonna like go somewhere else. And like they made her get out of the car and walk 2 miles in the middle of the night back home. It's like 1 a.m. and they make her walk 2 hours home from a party because they were like, we have something else to do. And like they were like, bye sis, and was like laughing as they were driving off. And I'm like, so, and like she didn't say anything to like Callum, and I guess they kind of expected her to, but I'm like, that was never addressed. Like it was just more reason of like, oh, they're really shitty, but like it was never actually kind of addressed. But they were like playing these mind games with her. And even Reed, who she liked, who is her brother, by the way, I cannot emphasize this enough, her brother is her brother now. Her brother. And not even like, I can understand like some people some people try to like act like play the argument of like blood related versus like not blood related, and like it's okay since they're not blood related. That is her brother. I'm getting loud. Let me calm down. That's her brother. So Reed will play these mind games where he's like, he definitely wants to like have sex with her, and he definitely like gets turned on by her when he's like not, because he doesn't show interest in any other girl, but it's very apparent that he wants her and he only gets turned on by her or whatever, right? But like then he'll turn around and say shit like, oh, I'd never fuck you, or I'd only fuck you out of pity, or like I'd never love you, or like just like insult her in order to put down her feelings, which is obviously like the book is basically trying to say like she doesn't know it, but it's very obvious in the book that it's like, oh, he only does that because he thinks he's not good enough for her, so he tries to push her away by like insulting her. And I'm like, that's psychological abuse, sweetie. Oh my god, psychological and emotional abuse. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It's so much. It's so, and that goes on for 200 pages until he finally admits that he actually likes her. Because Ella hit a point where she was like, I know you want me, but like he won't admit it. And then there was even a moment where she was like, are you gonna admit that you love me now? And he's like, yeah, or something, some crap like that, something very close to that. But like, they're at the same time they're siblings, and even Ella acknowledged it once they got together, because she like didn't want anyone at school to find out. But she was basically like, I wonder what people will say when they find out that I'm kind of sort of dating my kind of sort of brother. So both of y'all are aware. Like, everyone knows, everyone is aware, everyone accepts that this is your brother. But you also have this desire for him, but like no one gives a fuck. That is your brother, your legal brother. And I don't even know where they live, but like, okay, so there's that. There's Easton. I already talked about Easton. Let's talk about the sex scenes. Because Jesus fucking Christ, girl. Like, first of all, I was not aware that there was sex scenes in this book, and I don't really mind or care. Hold on. I don't really mind if there are like sex scenes in YA or in or new adult. But I feel like I didn't know that there were gonna be sex scenes in here. And I was unaware of it. I was not mentally nor emotionally prepared for the sex scene when I encountered it, because I saw the first few sentences and my mind was like, okay, what they're gonna do is like, you know how a book will imply that two characters had sex and then they'll kind of like do a time skip over it, but it's basically like, yeah, and they did this. No, they went into full detail. Well, not as much detail as some other books, but they still went into detail, and I was just like, what is happening? The book is known from other reviews that I've seen people make. The book is infamous for being this like steamy romance book, which I would argue in this book is more of an erotica almost rather than a romance, because honestly there's very little to no romance. Like, there's no reason. I'm losing my voice and I don't know why. There's little to no reason for why Ella and like Reed have their attraction. There's no, and I would argue that like not every book needs to give reasons as to why two characters are attracted to each other, because a lot of people try to act like there's no chemistry between these two characters. I feel like there was chemistry, but we weren't sure why. It was just like, oh, these two characters find each other really hot and sexy, and that's why they want each other so much. Cool, but like when you try to imply like they love each other so much and they're so deeply soulmates, like there's, why though? Like there's nothing there. Like even Reed admitted towards the end of the book, there's a scene where he's like laying down with Ella or something, and he admitted like, even the first moment I saw you, I thought you were so sexy, because he gave her like this defiant look or whatever, or like she was giving him this spicy look, and he was like, it was so hot. And she was like, even though I was wearing like scrub clothes, like she had like a t-shirt and like jeans and like some combat boots or something like that. And she was like, even though I looked like a hobo, and he was like, yeah, especially. And I'm like, so you're admitting from the moment you saw her, you had sexual feelings for her. But even throughout the book, there's all these moments that are emphasized where it's just like an electric whatever sprung through her body, or how she had a burning sensation in her body. And I'm like, girl, I can't even begin to describe to you how much I don't care right now. Like, I don't care. I don't. And it was like, first of all, if we're even going to talk about sex, can we talk about how they did the sex incorrectly? Like, I understand everyone has their own little, like, whatevers, but, like, Ella would get turned on from things that didn't make sense. Like, Reed would, like, give her a look, and she'd be like, I'm moist. And I'm like, or, like, Reed would, like, lick his lips. Or, like, he would, like, kind of kiss her passionately enough, and she's like waterfalls, and I'm like, what? That's not how that works. That's not how that works. But then in the back of my mind, I was like, I mean, if that's truly her thing, like, I guess, but like, it's so unrealistic. Like, it sets up this expectation for certain young people that it's like, you don't have to do that much work to like turn someone on, and that's not necessarily how that works. Like, it's like once you find the one, all they have to do is lick their lips, and like you gratification, like your magic, black magic, clothes soaked. Like, that's not okay. All right. Then on top of that, there was, it wasn't, honestly, the sex scenes weren't even that bad until like there was one, the boat scene. Honestly, I could have gone without the entire boat scene, honestly, but it happened and it was there. But after the boat scene, it was like the last 100 pages, maybe even 50 pages, was like back to back to back to back to back to back sex scenes. And I was like, oh my god, spare me. I don't need it in my life. I mean, how do I say this? It was mostly because like Ella and Reed were like officially together. Like, they both admitted their feelings to each other. And so like every other moment they was just like and I'm like, I don't, like, I get it. Like, they were kind of like, I want to claim you. I want you all mine. I want to, like, and I'm like, that's great, but, like, spare me the details, you know? Like, I don't need to know about every single instant. Okay. But, like, on top of that, and there was so many scenes that I think I lost the interpretation somewhere, but it's like, there was one scene where Reed starts showing up in her bed, like, randomly at night, and they'll, like, go at it. At some point, I assumed that Ella was not a virgin anymore, but apparently she was talking to her friend Valerie, and like Valerie like found out and like asked her like, "Oh, have you guys like whatever?" She was like, "No, I'm still a virgin." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Apparently, the story is that they've been messing around, but like they haven't been doing like, can I say that on YouTube? I don't think I can say that on YouTube. They haven't been doing you know, they haven't been actually like, it's mostly just like, how do I say this without getting a strike on my channel? It's like, it's like foreplay stuff, right? Nothing beyond that, okay? So, that wasn't established, because the way it happened was like, it was described as like Reed was grinding against her, and then it just time skipped to like the next morning. So I'm thinking, okay, they like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't clear, especially since the book kind of wanted, especially towards the like last 50 pages, wanted to emphasize like, but she's still a virgin. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about, this is what a lot of books that I've read in the past do, is that they try to like act like, oh, they give you these steamy scenes, and they might give you like foreplay, like what Ella and Reed have been doing, or they'll do a thing where it's like they'll always start but then stop, and then it's like, I guess it's supposed to tease the reader into wanting to read more, but at the same time I'm like, I don't give a fuck about her virginity, girl. Either you're gonna keep it or you're gonna, like, I don't care what you do, like, live your life. Okay, that's a whole nother thing, that's just me. But like the scenes on top of that weren't, I wasn't feeling them. It's not my cup of tea. I personally am not that crazy about like sex in books in general, but like I'm here for like people doing that because, you know, sex education in a way that's like appealing and not at all scary to like young folks. Got it. Gotcha. I'm on the same page. Hip hip hoorah. But like at the same time, I like skip over them half the time because I'm just like, ooh, girl, I don't. Listen, let me tell you something. As someone who is in their 20s, I'm not here for 16, like, I'm not, 16-year-olds having sex is like, whoop, oop, 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 girl, nope. Anyway, I'm getting loud again. Those were the sex scenes. Take it for what you will. Like I said, I feel like it's more of an erotica than like a romance thing, but someone could argue against that. I don't see the romance. I see sexual attraction. I don't see romantic attraction, but you know, to each their own. I'm almost through all of this, all right? Let's talk about the writing, which is not something that I don't have a lot to say. The writing is short and simple enough for me to understand. Plot points were pretty much wrapped up within a couple pages. So it wasn't like anything that bad. Like something would start and end in a chapter. You know, like keeping it short, concise, to the point. Fine. That's great. I don't really care. I'm not that picky. The purple prose, though, girl, it was. And I've heard other booktubers like complain about this little thing, but it's like when you describe, it's the thing that certain authors do where they describe the character, but they don't describe it. They don't describe like characters in an interesting way. Like all the emphasis on what Reed looked like was always on his abs, was always on his muscles, was always how sexy and hot he was always like, we never really got real descriptions about him. In the beginning, when Ella first sees them, she's like, they look like thugs, and that was it. And like, she was like, they all had blue eyes, they all had like dark hair, and I'm thinking, okay, they have black hair. No, they have brunette hair. Girl, let me tell you, I get it, like brunette hair, dark brunette hair is still dark hair, but like if you tell me this character has dark hair and nothing else, I'm gonna think, okay, they have black hair. Tell me why I'm on page 200 something, and this girl's like, yeah, Reed's like brunette, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Ella, who we only get one description of like once, was like, I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. Like she was like, I'm the epitome of whatever. And like, never again was it addressed. Like I couldn't even get like his blue orbs looked at me, like none of that, girl. None of it. I was like, damn, can I get some water? Can I get some description other than his fucking abs, please? Girl, it got so bad. I would see a sentence that would start to talk about how sexy Reed is and like skip. I would just skip over all of it. And I was like, damn. If I'm skipping over stuff, that's when it's really bad. Like I've heard some people like skip around when they're reading. Like they're like, yeah, if the author starts doing this, then I start skipping paragraphs or pages. And I'm like, that's my nightmare as a writer. Like if someone starts skipping words, if someone starts skipping information in the book, I failed. And I was like, but I found myself skipping, and I'm like, I don't want to read anymore about how like I don't care. I don't care. I do not care. I wish I cared. I don't care. What else do I have to say? Honestly, there's not much else to say. The twins were basically useless. They did absolutely nothing the entire like book, and went from like hating Ella to like liking Ella because Reed said so. They had no reason for any motivation behind their actual feelings for Ella. It was just like, oh, because Reed told us, now we feel this way. She didn't really connect with the twins in any way. She barely even talked to them. Besides the one scene where she found out like Sawyer was pretending to be Sebastian to fuck his girlfriend, and then the one scene where like they kind of covered for her when they were trying to do the revenge against like, I think his name was Daniel that like drugged her or whatever. But the one scene where like they got revenge for that, and then that was it. Like the twins literally do nothing in the story. They have no importance. There's a whole thing with like Gideon, where Gideon is like, it starts to feel, especially at the end, that Gideon is like more important than it seems. But like every time Ella did anything or walked anywhere, the first person that would enter the scene is either Easton or Reed. Easton or Reed. Easton or Reed. Reed or Easton. It was one of them. Always. I 100% promise you, it was always one of them. And I kind of appreciate that I've noticed definitely 100% that like in the beginning, Ella kind of gravitated without really intending to being around Callum and kind of spending time with Callum and talking to Callum and being around Callum and socializing with Callum. Like she was a little bit dependent on him, but it went from her being around Callum all the time to her being around Easton and Reed all the time, which is fine because I feel like that's good character development, you know, like she's starting to actually be close to the brothers in the way Callum would have wanted. But like even halfway through the book, like Ella is trying to have sex with Reed and Reed is like, we can't, Callum's home. And she kind of thinks about it and she's like, yeah, I think Callum wouldn't be happy if he found out that I was getting close to Reed like in this way. And I'm like, and so she stops and I'm like, so y'all are aware that like you as siblings, again, y'all are siblings, but you acknowledge that what y'all doing is like not right, or at least that like Callum wouldn't approve of it. So what are we doing? What's our story here? I thought towards the end, which is why I was trying to give the book the benefit of the doubt, where like they were going to do the reading. I thought they were going to try to bring in some sort of plot where it was like, oh, I mean, because technically you have, okay, this is a mess. Ella's father, I forgot his name, like Henry or something like that, was married to someone else. He did not know about Ella's mother existing or Ella. Like, they were a one-time fling, and, like, Ella's mom got pregnant, but then they, like, never saw each other because it was, like, a one-night stand type of thing. So, his widow is now, like, first of all, she doesn't believe that Ella is, like, his actual kid, so she's, like, asking for, like, paternity tests, which they did, but then she's like, I want my people to do it. So, and that's only because Ella was given, like, 1/4 of the company, and like all this money, all of his money, like half of his money that he died when he died goes to like Ella, and she was like super pissed about it. So she's like asking about this paternity test because obviously she wants all of the fucking money, whatever. But like, so I thought maybe it was gonna try to present this idea of like, you know, maybe like she's not his kid and like all of this was for naught. So like I was thinking, well, maybe they're gonna introduce this plot point of like she's not actually his kid, but like now they have this familial attachment. So like they'll be like, Ella, don't go, you're part of the family now or whatever. Or even then, it would be like an excuse for like this is not actually incest, so it's okay. But they didn't. And the way it was set up, I was like, well, the paternity test for Brooke that Brooke wanted her people to do was like never addressed. So I'm guessing it would be addressed in another book. But even then, I was like, it must be trying to, like in my mind, it must be trying to accommodate for the incest part of this book. But even then, it would be a hard stretch because even then, like the whole book is reliant upon the fact of like she is related to them now. And that's why Callum is taking care of her, because Callum is best friends with like her dad. So like he adopted her because they were so close. So like it wouldn't make sense for her to be around them anymore unless you would pull a like, well, you're basically family now, which would still make it like incesty. Do you see why I'm confused? Like, do you see why I want it to make sense and it's not making sense? I'm trying to make it make sense. A part of me wants to read the other books just to see if it'll end up making sense by the end, but another part of me is like, this book was not it. Like, this book was serving it up Gary's way. Oh, before I forget, before I end this video, let's talk about the actual author, Aaron Watt. So I thought you thought it was over? You thought it was done? I'm not. You think Aaron Watt is an author? You've been tricked. You've been swafferdunked. You've been bamboozled, because guess what? Aaron Watt is a brainchild of two best-selling authors linked together through their love of great books and an addiction to writing. Swafferdunked. Let me read to you about the author. They share one creative imagination, coming up with fun and sometimes crazy ideas. Their greatest fear, breaking up. You can contact them at their shared inbox. Bamboozled. This Aaron Watt is first of all a pseudonym for two best-selling authors who came together to write the series in the first place. They have two other like standalone books, but like this was written by two authors who are pretending to be one. Like, this concept is not foreign to me, like a book written by two authors. It's just, I've never encountered it done in this way before, of like two authors under one name type of thing. You picking up what I'm putting down? I have read other, some of them popular, some of them not, books that's written by 2-3 people. And I had this ongoing theory. I don't know if I ever said it on this channel, but I definitely said it to my friend. I had this ongoing theory that books, fiction books, I had this ongoing theory that fiction books written by two people are almost always trash. And I hate to say it, because I was like, well, maybe it's a personal preference of mine that if it's written by two authors, I just don't like it for one reason or another. Because at first it was like, well, the ideas, the two, like, it's usually because, in my opinion, if it's written by two authors, the two authors' voices just clash and don't work well. And you can tell it doesn't work well. But in this case, I was even under the guise of this is written by one author. And the voice, the voice is primarily the same. Like, it's written in a way that where it's like consistent, and you can't, because some books I've read where it's like, it's very obvious where one author stopped writing and the next author like the other author picked up the story, and it's like, ooh, yikes, girl. But like, even then, like, this is written in a way where it's like you can tell it's written by one person, but it's not good. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, maybe there's some people who disagree with me who will be like, you know, this book was written by two authors and it's great. But even then, like, I still have been proven time and time again to myself that books written by two authors are terrible. They're awful. They're not good. And it's, well, it only stands for fiction books. I don't know about nonfiction, but for fiction, it's just no bueno. I'm going to give this book a 1 star. I was going to give it the standard 3 stars at first, just because, you know how you read a trashy book, but it's like so bad it's good type of thing? I was going to give it this rating just because I was like, well, you know, it's trashy, so I kind of enjoyed it because it was trashy. Like, you know, some people have that one like trashy YA or like trashy like romance book that you're like, it, you know, is your secret pleasure. It was gonna be this until I realized, like, oh wait, this is incest. So, you know, hit like page 20 and was like, oh, this is incest. So, all that being said, 1 star. Thanks for watching this video. That's all for now, folks. I will see you next week.
1, 2, 3, funky. My darling, I love you.